This is our interview section of the Songwriters Showcase. For the people who are watching us on whatever cable show we manage to wangle, you will only see our interview, but I'd like to inform you that the showcase has three major segments. One is an interview with a music industry professional. Another thing is called Cassette Roulette. It's a songwriter's, they're critiquing your songs. It's a songwriter's it's a publisher's opportunity to evaluate your songs. And the third segment is called Pitchathon, and that's where producers are looking for material for acts on their label or for songs for acts who are already recording with them. And this evening we're very fortunate to have two people who have credits longer than the Old Testament. And the first of them is responsible for, he was the founder and the president of the legendary STAX Records of Memphis. And during that time, he produced and marketed artists who collectively to date have sold more than 55 million albums and tapes and achieved 50 gold albums, 30 platinum albums, and more than 25 Grammy Awards and an Oscar. That was Isaac Hayes' Shaft. And performers that have been associated with that label include Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Rufus Thomas, Carla Thomas, Booker T and the MGs, Sam and Dave, the Barcades, the Staple Singers, and that's just a few. Please welcome Al Bell. And along with Al Bell, I would like to introduce another person who has an equally long and fabulous career in the music industry. He acted as both the vice president and vice president of sales and the vice president of marketing with MCA Records. And during that time, he was involved in gold sellers that include American Graffiti, The Sting, Jaws, Car Wash, Jesus Christ Superstar, the Coal Miner's Daughter. Please welcome Rick Frio. Together they've recently put together a new album, a new record company called Edge Records. And we'd like to, first of all, I'd like to explore just a little of the ways that you came together to put together this new company. And just talk to about, Rick, why don't you start speaking about that and kind of get right in this microphone.
Well, over the many years, I've respected Mr. Bell through the various industry functions, the Gavin conventions, Billboard conventions, NARM conventions. So it's hard not to realize there's a genius.
That's right.
As a competitor. And about a year ago, no, a little bit more than a year ago, about 14 months ago, a mutual friend suggested that I talk with Mr. Bell, since we were both doing different things, but not doing exactly what we wanted to do. And when he said, you two ought to sit and talk, ears perked up, eyes opened, and nostrils flared, sort of a mini orgasm. We sat and talked. We talked for a couple of months, and this is serious. And around May, I think we formed a corporation, and for the next couple of months we put our minds together and released our first piece of product November 6th, and that's what it's been.
When they say that in May, now check this out, friends, these are people that do get things done. When they say in May they started talking, and in November they put out their first piece of product, That's phenomenal. Now, I'd just like to tell you, in that time, within about the last 3 months or so, is that about how long?
Correct.
3 or 4 months, 3 months or so, they have product out on Mavis Staples, David D., Marshall and Babb, well, really like five or six artists, and that's a kind of a phenomenal, condensed effort. How were you able to do that so fast? I mean, what do you take? No. I mean, that is quite rapid to.
Well, it would be for, in quotes, the normal individual, but we're talking about L. Bell.
Yeah, right.
It's a little bit different.
We aren't going to give you a chance to speak here. You know this.
I'm his publicist.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like it's a short period of time, and it is when you say it that way. But the fact is, we have between us 50-odd years of experience on how to do that.
Let me speak to Al Bell for a second. Now, how old were you when you first started? Well, what was your history before you founded STAX Records, and what was your story before then? Tell us how some of that took place.
All right, let me correct you on one thing. We don't have a product out on Mavis Staples yet. No, we manage Mavis, and in the not-too-distant future, we will have product released on her, but we do have product on the other 5 artists. I suppose it's safe to say that I started in this business in high school as a disc jockey for the record hops. During my high school years, I was president of the Audiovisual Aid Society. And the Audiovisual Aid Society was responsible for providing the entertainment for the socials, as we call them at that time. And my job as president was to go out and spin the records while everybody danced in the gym with the wax on the floor, you know, and all of that. Sock hops. And of course it was there where I began to appreciate, quite frankly, what music did to people. And I moved from the involvement there in high school to radio, and I became a disc jockey / radio announcer during my senior year in high school, and worked my way through college in radio. While in radio in Little Rock, Arkansas, which has a population of 2 horses, a dog, a cat, and a mule, and 2 of my cousins and mother and father. I had an occasion to experience something that I considered a phenomenon then and even today to a certain extent, whereby at that time the heads of the major independent companies of that era and the promotion personnel from those companies would come to Little Rock to bring me a phonograph record to play on my radio program. That seemed to be terribly expensive, coming all the way to Little Rock from Chicago, like a Chess Records, or from Texas, which was a Duke Records at that time, and from Memphis, which was a Satellite Records, which was the forerunner of STAX Records. Coming into Memphis, Tennessee to get me to play, into Little Rock to get me to play a record didn't make sense. And what it caused me to do, being as I was as a kid, was to explore the economics of phonograph records. I mean, you had to make money with these records, as far as I was concerned as a kid, to justify somebody coming there. And as I explored the economics of the phonograph record business, I started finding out more and more about how to make money, how a record was made, etc. And that led me into forming my first label with a guy, Red Matthews, who was the writer of White Silver Sands. We formed a label after I left Little Rock and went to Memphis, Tennessee in radio, and abandoned the label after about a year. Then I went into Washington, D.C. in radio and started another label at that time and began to produce for one of his former companies, Decca Records. And then from Washington, D.C. in radio with my own label there, I left and went into Memphis, Tennessee and joined STAX Records.
Let me ask you this. At that time, when you produced something, when you put together a record, was there any restrictions regarding your playing the record that you were responsible for producing or that your record company owned on your programs?
Oh, I think they had some sort of restrictions that they discussed at that time, but I must admit that didn't really adhere to them. I think that the FCC regulations during that time said that if you owned the record company or if you were involved directly in the production of the record where dollars inured to your benefit, that you could in fact play 10% of that product on your program. So if I played 100 records, 10 of them could be mine. If I listed 100 records, 10 of them could be mine, you know.
So what was the response of some of your early productions on those stations?
Well, the early ones reasonably successful. The early ones in Washington, D.C. I must tell you that at the risk of sounding egotistical and certainly awfully lucky, I don't think I've ever produced a bad record. The very first record was, and as I hear it today, I say that objectively and candidly, and I don't know anything about producing phonograph records too. I hasten to say that. I can't...
How can you say that? How can you say that?
Well, I can't, I'm not qualified. I cannot sing. I cannot play a musical instrument. I cannot keep time. And none of the things that, based on my ethnic background, I'm supposed to be. So I'm not qualified if we use that criteria to determine what makes a producer. I'm not qualified.
Then what do you attribute to your success then? Since you aren't qualified and you've been doing it so successful, there's a, kind of a catch-22 there.
Well, if you want to call it success, I have a God-given talent, and that's the ability to hear and to feel. I can hear when it is sharp and when it is flat. I can't tell you the difference between sharp and flat, but I can hear when it's wrong. Yeah, when it's not right, I can hear that. And I can feel it when it feels good. And if it does not feel good, then it is not right. And I go on that. I wouldn't care if it was classical music or if it's country music. If it does not feel good, it is not right.
How did you structure your things financially at that time? I mean, let me take this out of here and just get rid of that and just hand this back and forth. How were you able to structure your things financially? And at that time, as in this time, how did you set up your distribution arrangements, and how were monies flowing? Were you involved in pressing of the record and its distribution? Just run all that down to us.
Well, you mean the period of time in the early years? Yeah. Well, hip pocket and bootstrapping. I think maybe when we started Suffice Records in Washington, D.C., we may have had a couple $100 at that time. May have had between my two partners and myself. The method of distribution was through independent distributors then, and of course that's where my area of expertise is today, in independent distribution. And I guess that's basically it. I knew of many of the distributors in the South, and certainly the mid-Atlantic area where I was at that time in Washington, D.C. And the distribution for the product that we were releasing on the Suffice label in Washington was primarily in Washington, Baltimore, some Philadelphia, and the Virginias, North and South Carolina. We didn't venture past that geographic area.
Right now, so many of the people that we hear from talking about the independent distribution deals that they make sing one repetitive, sad refrain, and that is, if you have a hit quality record and you only have one, then the independent distributors will just pass on paying you. It's only if you have a series of successful records happening will they pay you. Did you ever have any difficulties in getting paid for the product that you had created through independent producers?
Well, according to my history, and now I'm including STAX, we only experienced 2% bad debt. So, and that was during a period of time when a number of the independent distributors were going under in the mid-1970s. I have heard, and I know it to be a fact, that the independent distributors do have a reputation of not paying, and certainly that is the case many times because ownership is well, it's just bad people in terms of being responsible in that area. In some instances, the distributors get a bad rap because a independent entrepreneur releases a phonograph record and it does not sell, and they expect to be paid simply because they've shipped some records to that independent distributor, so the distributor gets a bad rap as a result of that. And certainly it is the case that it is easier to collect your money when you follow a hit with a hit. But if you have a hit in the marketplace, it does not sell all of the product at one time. And as you enjoy continued sales on a hit, you can collect on your previous sales until obviously you reach a point where you're not selling as much and the demand isn't there. But and all of the negatives that we've heard about the independents are accurate. But dealing with independent distributors with respect to the financial aspect is like writing a song, it's like producing a song, it's like the arranger, it's like the artist. The point I'm making here is that that in itself is an art form. And unless you understand that art form, you should not and will not be able to collect your money in a timely fashion from independent distributors. But if you understand that art form and you excel in same, then I assure you that your problems there will be minimal.
Within an organization of Motown, they talked about the great attention that they would pay to artist development. Did you have any artist development type of programs, or tell me how that worked? I mean, would you find people when they were not quite ready and go through stages to prepare them to be the artists that they ultimately were revealed to be?
You mean during STAX?
During that STAX period.
Well, yes, we did, but not as sophisticated as Motown. Motown excelled in it, and I applaud them for what they were able to do. We looked for the diamonds in the rough, if you will, as Motown did, and we developed the artist in conjunction with the management at that time, as opposed to having the direct involvement. Now, I mean development in terms of stage presentation and what have you, but we did spend the kind of quality time required to develop them in the recording studio techniques and the art form that's employed in recording. But as far as the performing art form, we did not.
Rick, you were probably, I mean, your area of expertise, and you were involved in sales and marketing at MCA, and you were, I guess, you bring a lot of that expertise to this a new relationship. And so with this super creator, and I'm not saying that he isn't proficient in that area also, but you both come together with a lot of power from those two things. Tell us about what your, can you talk to us at all about what your game plan is now to break some of these new artists that you're recently involved with? I mean, I know that that's kind of a broad, it's very broad, but can you discuss it at all?
Well, let's see. The overall goal is to recreate STAX in the 80s and into the 90s. Yes, for development, it's super important that we get involved. What we originally started was a management company, a publishing company, and then we found, as I'm sure some of you people are aware of, some difficulty in some of the ideas and the artists that we had in breaking them, as we know how to break them. The industry isn't like it used to be when we were doing that thing. So we entered into our own record company. We created Edge Records to get some of these artists off and running into the marketplace. So the idea about developing artists is probably first and foremost in our minds. And with that, we will work with, as we were just termed earlier, a Motown concept, whether it's working on an act, working on stage presence, working with material, developing in the studios. Yes, we do have an overall concept for our acts.
Are you aiming predominantly for R&B market, or with eyes to make a base there, with eyes to cross over, or what is your plan in that regard?
I don't think we've categorized our company as aiming at an R&B market. In watching the Grammys last night and Dick Clark last week, I can't tell you what an R&B market is anymore. When whoever grabs the award is the talent.
Right.
I don't think anybody questioned R&B or what's Anita Baker. I mean, she was grabbing an award. I don't say that's R&B. But Whitney Houston walked down. It's not R&B.
Well, but although that is true, it was still necessary for both Anita Baker and Whitney Houston to establish a foothold in black radio before she was able to cross over, I believe.
Well, then conversely, I guess you'd say that Madonna crossed over the opposite way, because she's now being played on black radio. So
that's true.
It's
that's
so
always
homogenized.
been that's always been easier, as we well know. Al, what were you involved in the interim between the demise of STAX and the formation of the new company?
Did you make R&B black?
No.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead and
No. I was trying to follow your thoughts. First, let me just add to that. We believe in music.
Yeah.
And if you want to deal with the idioms, we intend to deal with all of the music idioms. And our plans are presently to deal with all kinds of music, save classical. So I wanted to really be clear on that. I have a problem, as does Rick, with the categories. Yeah, R&B generally implies black, and I didn't want you to get confused about what I was speaking about.
If you hadn't noticed,
the reason that I would raise that, I know, but the reason that I was I would raise this question is, they well know it with tongue in cheek, is that that so many young artists complain if let us say that it's a black artist that cannot, because of their style, really fit into an R&B category, they can get a hell of a time trying to get a record, and if they get a contract to see the light of day. And those are some problems that are still with us, and that we do have to recognize. And but we still can't get around.
Oh, I agree. I just I find the category is extremely distasteful,
well,
because I know where they come from.
The only way we categorize the records or the product at our company is because you can see the obvious difference here. Al takes all of the tall records, and I take all of the short records. And that's how we break it up.
I'd like to have a few questions from the house, because see, what is happening is I'll just tell you guys, there's a strange phenomenon is happening. I'm bringing you these fabulous guests each week, and for some reason the people keep getting later and later. And with people of this stature, I really hate to walk in here at 7 o'clock and present them to 4 people in the audience. And so then what happens is we have backed up this interview, and now I have just been informed, that Ron Handler has another appointment at 9, when we told him that he would be able to leave, and so it's cutting down cassette roulette for a while. I will only be able to address a few questions from the house, and then we're going to have to call our interview to a close, which will be cool because it's been a half hour, but just cut cassette roulette short. Come and check out what's happening with these interviews. Anybody want to know anything? Raise your hand, talk loudly.
That's great.
All right.
Everybody knows everything. Oh no. This is Artie Wayne over here. He knows everything, but come on, Artie.
Al, are you looking for new songs?
He says, are you looking for new songs?
Well, I'm always looking for new songs. As a matter of fact, the most important thing about our business is a song and a song first. I mean, that supersedes all of it, before the artist and before the producer, so yes. We always and always will be. At the moment, we're not, however, but we will be when we begin production on our next series of releases.
Yes, in the back, I can't see. Just stand up and talk loudly.
I understand what you're saying about not targeting to black or white specifically. I understand that. But radio formats have gotten so isolated. Radio has gone so many, you're either country, you're urban, you only have so many radio formats. When you take an artist like some of the artists you're talking about, you have to do marketing to the radio format. How are you going to deal with that?
The question...
And, I'm sorry, one other thing. If you're dealing with format, how much promotion money do you feel you're going to have to put into that format per record, per single, per album, however you're going to do it? How much you're going to have to put in to get somebody started?
The question basically is how much money are you going to address to specific radio formats to get some action now?
Yeah, well, it was that plus yes. With respect to the first part of your question, I find the categories distasteful. The R&B, the pop, the country, etc. In my mind, pop should really be a short for popular music. We know in reality, though, that when we say R&B music, generally we're speaking of music performed by black people, and when we say pop music, generally we're saying music that's performed by white people, or music that's been performed by black people to an extent that it is accepted and appreciated by the masses, and it is then considered popular music. Now, as with any product, when you're marketing it, you look for your target audience. If we have a black artist that is singing a song that is identified because of its musical structure as blues, then we would market it to a blues audience, and we would look for those radio stations that program blues music, and we would, dealing with the realities of the business, both broadcasting and the record side, promote it accordingly. We would do the same with so-called R&B/urban contemporary music. We would go for the urban contemporary stations, and if it was classified as country, we would do the same in jazz and so forth. I find the categories distasteful because I know where they come from, and it is where they come from that disturbs me. Now, with respect to the expenditures, a major company structured with its branch distribution and its mass merchandising capabilities, the ability to manufacture product and position that product in all of your major retail outlets and your racks and your large independent freestanding retail outlets are able to and do in fact spend an enormous amount of money in the neighborhood of, well, it varies. I don't know what the last stock quote is on it, but it ranges from $300,000 to $500,000 or what have you per record, per release. And they do that to support their mass merchandise approach to selling product. And that is why generally your major record companies will only deal with, as a rule, established artists or artists that have name value. So that when they spend these kinds of monies, that is justified in the sales that they expect. Now, your smaller companies, like our company, for an example, one, cannot afford to spend that kind of money. Two, we don't find it economically sound to do that because we are generally developing new artists. So you find your radio station, the niche for the artist in the marketplace, and you concentrate and target your dollars, and you build the artist until you get to the point where you have a broader and general market acceptance of the artist, and you increase your expenditures accordingly. As conservative as a small company like ours would have to be, you would reinvest the dollars that you earn from the profits of the phonograph records that were sold. I hope I answered your question sufficiently.
That last statement was worth the evening alone. Two more questions quickly. Yes.
Yes, sir. I have a question as to what type of promotional campaign your company mounts. Do you lean on video, or are you going to lean on printed media with radio promotion, or could you just give us a general outline of what type of promotional campaign your company mounts?
What type of promotional campaign does the company mount?
Well, what's the brokerage firm that says we believe in doing the old-fashioned way we earn it?
Smith Barney.
Yeah, Smith Barney. Our approach, and I suppose it's because we are an independent company, a small company, and I suppose it's because we are dealing with primarily new artists. But the approach that we are using is dealing firstly with what we pride ourselves in being able to do quite well, and that is in-store airplay. We go to our retailers, we get our product positioned in our retailers, and we provide those retailers with a sufficient amount of free goods that would incentivize them to play our product in their retail outlets for two purposes. One, to ensure that the product is there, and secondly, to ensure that that product is played for the customer that comes in the store. Once we put that in place, then our next move is to go for radio airplay, basic fundamental record promotions, radio airplay to support where we have positioned the product in the marketplace. After we've done that, then we will go to whatever print advertising that we need to do at that time, whether it's consumer print or trade print, and preferably consumer print because we find that more valuable. As far as video is concerned, we're going to eventually deal with video, but at this point in time we choose not to do so because we are not interested, one, in removing the mystique as it relates to the artist and categorizing them, and we're not interested in getting our artists trapped into a position where they become video artists as opposed to performing artists. We want them to develop their performing capabilities as opposed to developing the video crutch.
One last question here.
Yes, I'm interested in directing my music to a certain artist because I collaborate with different style musicians, and some of them are rock players, some of them are rhythm and blues, so to speak. And I hear a certain sound that fits a particular artist that I like to direct the song that I wrote to. How do I approach this artist? What ways do I prepare my material and my resume, so whatever, to approach these artists or the record company to get this material to this particular artist?
You got that one ready.
You can handle it briefly because we address
Okay, well, I've had that question come up quite a bit, and if it's for a specific artist, well, first make your demo in the direction that artist performs, and then how to get it to the artist. Yes, through the record label, but I would prefer myself to go probably to the producer of the artist, because the producer is going to be your first line of defense. Most record companies are mass distributors of merchandise. They're promoters, they're collectors, they're just merchandising operations. The real creative departments of the record company are from the production end. Now, if you look at the production end of record companies, it's an A&R staff, but that's just mostly relegated down to purchasing agents. They will buy product when it's finished. But for a specific, like your example, of a song for a specific artist, I would probably go right to the producer. If you knew that Olivia Newton-John was being produced by John Farrar, get it to John Farrar. The question is, how do you get it to John Farrar? Well, then we go to step two. I mean, there are various publishers, or if he's involved with an agent, they generally have managers too, and you take it step by step like that. Family and friends always work, but to just present it to a record company, it doesn't get to anybody. It really doesn't.
We're always saying surround the target with the record. That means that the roadies, the people that play in the band, the hairdresser, the girlfriend, the mother, anybody. Okay, please join me in thanking Al Bell and Rick Friel.